What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the shop. Again, I kind of just ended a video, but I'm starting another one because, you know, I'm trying to stay on top of this stuff. But anyway, in the last video, we did the panhard bar. I know I didn't show a whole lot in that one. I already did a lot of the work and kind of just sprinkled some footage in there. But on this one, we're going to do the lower shock mounts, and then that's basically a wrap on the rear suspension, which I'm kind of pumped on because that means we get to cut the firewall out and jam this long, ridiculous motor in there that I should just get a different motor, but instead I'm being difficult because I want to convert this to, you know what I mean, stupid stuff. But anyway, again, here we go with the rear end. You can see the 4-link bars that I made. Basically everything here is designed and built by me. I cut it on the CNC after designing it in the computer. And bebop skiddly doo, here you go. It's all in there. It all functions pretty good. The rear end goes up, the car now goes up and down on the suspension without any issues with the swaying back and forth now that we put the panhard bar in there. Only gripe with this whole setup right now is I'm losing a lot of room up top here, which the original plan was to put a gas tank in there. So we're gonna have to figure something else out for that. I actually think I'm going to end up getting rid of these factory spring-loaded hinges for the trunk. And we're probably going to end up doing like a hydraulic or something along that line. I don't really know yet, but we'll figure that out when we get there. Because I do need some room for an air tank and a compressor and a gas tank. And I would also like to have some room to put stuff in here if I need to. So that whole height thing kind of sucks, but at half travel when you set this stuff up, I wanted it to be parallel with that crossbar, so I had to make it that high on purpose. But anyway, that's besides the point. I actually need to make a bracket for that to finish that out, and then I need to make the lower shock mounts, which is the focus of this video. So I'm sweaty, I'm dirty, I apologize, but you know, screw it, I'm in the shop. This is what we do. So let's get to it. I'm gonna kind of walk you guys a little bit through my design process here because I've had that question asked to me on Instagram. Follow me on my Instagram. Link is down, well, name is down in the description. Yeah, follow me on Instagram. I had somebody ask that they wanted me to kind of bring you guys through the design process when I'm trying to like figure these brackets out and stuff, because like I said, I do design all of this stuff on my own. I take all of my own measurements, and everything that is on here is literally designed, measured, designed, cut, welded, whole nine, everything by me. There's no kit here besides this panhard bar, which I ended up even scrapping the brackets that they gave you with it and only used the heim joint ends and the threaded bar. But everything else is made by me. So they kind of want me, well, somebody had asked me to walk through my design process and how to, I don't know, I guess design a bracket from scratch. So that's what we fit and did. I'm going to set up the camera and kind of just give you guys a little bit of a gist on what I'm thinking for these shock mounts. I'm a bit concerned about them, and I do have some thicker material, which I think is what I'm going to end up doing. And well, let me do this, and I'll show you, and you know what I mean. Let's just, yeah. Okay, so first things first, you need a tape measure. That's an obvious one. But as you guys can see here, we don't have a whole lot of options for mounting unless I literally make all new brackets that are, you know, kind of some weird shape to bolts up here. So we're gonna have to go from the bottom bag mount here on both sides. Now that's not a huge deal, it's just, if you guys can see, there are two pieces of plate right here that I haven't boxed in. I don't really feel like I need to box it in. There's literally a plate welded to the top of it, and then it's welded at the rear end. So it's really solid, back to you know, side to side is what I should say. So I don't really feel like I need to box any of that in. I will if I absolutely have to. Like I said, all of this stuff is coming out of the car at some point anyway. And it'll get like finish welded and, you know, make sure that I touched everything and cleaned everything before it gets like painted and put back in the car. So it's possible I might brace those, but what I've kind of been thinking, and I've been kind of racking my brain on this, is there's a single shear mount here, and I'm more than likely going to do a single shear here at the bottom. I know that's not ideal, but this isn't a performance car. This is literally a car that I need the shocks there for stability and things like that when I'm driving the car. Other than that, the shocks are holding no weight, and I'm not taking any hard corners. This is literally a slam the rear of it, drag it down the road, kind of tail dragger car. So I'm not super concerned of like performance, and I shouldn't say I'm not concerned with strength, because everything I've built here is extremely over engineered for strength. This being boxed in is ridiculous. Everything's cut out of 3/16 plate, ridiculous. This crossbar is like quarter wall because it's just what I had, so I used it. So it's a bit ridiculous in terms of strength. But I am concerned a little bit. So if you see here, I don't know if you guys can see that really good, but we're basically like right at the 4-inch mark here. So what I was thinking was, let me try and get you guys a little bit closer here. Okay, so what I was thinking here was underneath here is the bag mount, and that's steel just as well as this, and it's all welded together. So what I'm thinking is what we'll end up doing, try and set you up. What we'll end up doing here is we're probably going to come down from this top bracket here. Okay, we're going to come down from this top bracket, or I'm sorry, this top bag mount. We're going to weld down the side of this plate here and across the bag bracket at the bottom, the bag mount, and then we'll come straight down with a hole here, and we'll have another single shear bolt through the middle here. Now the way I go about designing stuff like this is you kind of just have to go, with everything being custom like this, you kind of just have to go with what you got. And right now that's kind of what I'm doing. I don't want to come off the rear end anymore. I literally have a lot of stuff welded to the rear end already. With the 4-link mounts and all of that. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff already on the rear end, and now I have this big huge thing here for the panhard bar. So I don't want to keep welding to the rear end. I actually need to make one more brace for this panhard bar, which is kind of annoying. So I don't want to keep trying to jam stuff on the rear end. It's just going to be convoluted and a little bit annoying to deal with at the end of the day. But with that being said, we can definitely come off the bottom of this bag bracket here, this bag mount. And I think what we're going to do is, like I said, you just kind of have to work with what you got. It's a flat piece of steel here and a flat piece of steel here. So I think we can weld about almost 2 inches. I want to say it's 1 3/4 down this side. And then we can weld across here about 1 1/4 as well. And now my main concern was I was going to cut this out of 3/16 plate. It's just what I've got loaded in the machine already, so that's what I was going to cut it out of. But now I think I'm going to load up some like 1/4 inch because I'm only going to cut one bracket per side. I'm not going to clamp this in like a U-shaped bracket or a double shear. It's going to be a single shear, just like the top here. And I think the thicker material will just let me rest easy at night. Now with this one, unfortunately, there's not really much you can do in terms of like cool design. As you guys can see on some of the stuff I've already done, you know, I like to put these holes in here and kind of have these like speed hole type deal in here. It just fancifies it a little bit. It's not super needed, but it definitely fancifies it a little bit. And you know, if this was a customer car, you know, I want them to look at what they're paying for and what I'm doing for them, and I want them to be, you know, in awe over it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not the greatest welder in the world, but I feel like when it comes to fabrication, I have a pretty good handle on what looks good and what functions correctly as well. And I think that's my strong suit, is just being creative and on my feet, and just like being able to come up with stuff on the spot. So, you know, I like to do that. You don't necessarily have to do that with your brackets. You can make them all flat brackets with no holes in them, and it'll look just as good, I'm sure. It's just stuff that I like to do. Now, unfortunately, on these ones, typically I would try and find a way to like maybe put a hole in there or like some webbing or something, but I want all the strength there, so I think it's just gonna be a solid mount, come straight down, hole at the bottom, 1/2 inch bolt goes through it, and we tighten it down on both sides. It's not going to be captive nut like this one. It's just going to be, I put 4 captive nuts in here. Sorry, preface. But yeah, so I think that's what we're gonna do. Just straight brackets and be done with it. So, gotta figure out how to do this. I have like some screen recording software I can do, I guess. Maybe we'll do that. Let's do that. Okay, so I brought you guys into my house. I'm going to be doing a real quick design on Autodesk Fusion 360, which is what I use to design all the parts that I make. And I'm just gonna kind of walk you through real quick about how so we already went through like design process. It really just depends on what you're working with. So first thing you're gonna need is a tape measure and just some good creativity. Basically just try to be as creative as possible, but also as functional as possible. Sometimes just making stuff round instead of like square, putting some holes in it or like a design on it or whatever can make all the difference, especially if you're making these parts for a customer. It can make all the big difference. So just be open-minded whenever you go to attack and actually like come up with an idea for a bracket. Because when you get to the software, that's kind of the easy part, honestly. Everyone kind of has their own methodology and their own flow when it comes to designing stuff on the computer. It just kind of matters out there the most when you're trying to take what you're working with currently and come up with something cool that you can use on the car. So with that being said, let's kind of just jump in here. I'm already doing the screen recording, I think. So let's just kind of jump in. First things first, you open up Fusion 360. When you are designing for 2D, like you're gonna cut on a plasma or a laser or water jet or something, you have to make sure that you select the correct plane, which you want the Z facing up, basically. So we select the plane, and now basically we just get to create our sketch. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fusion 360, but all of your basic design commands for creating a sketch are up here. And then there's also a drop down here where you could do arc and some certain things that aren't like as common. With this bracket, again, it's gonna be super easy. So let's just kind of get into it and go from there. Now, things that you have to keep in mind depending on what you're using to cut. You may have to make holes slightly larger. You just have to kind of test that out with your machine. On my plasma, all the holes that I end up cutting are undersized. So if I make something 1/2 inch, it's undersized by quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but enough to struggle getting the bolt through and I have to drill it out. So that's something you have to keep in mind as well. Just kind of know what machine you're cutting with, but we'll get into it real quick. Trying to judge off of what I've got on the machine right now. I think I should be able to design these lengthwise. So we'll make our line. And what did I say? So 4 inches, let's just make this a good 4.5 inches long, just like that. And now we've got our first design line. And you can kind of build off this. It's pretty self-explanatory after this. I know that across the top, let's just say that it's kind of weird looking at it this way, but this direction, let's say this way, we'll just do this real quick. This way, this line represents the bottom of our bag plate. So you're kind of looking at this like this, but that line represents the bottom of the bag plate. So with that being said, we know that the bottom of the bag plate, we're kind of coming out of it this way. So we're kind of looking at it from the side and like this. So what we want to know here is we have about a good solid inch that we can weld to. So we'll make it 1 inch wide, just like that. And then again, this is going to be 4.5 inches long. So you can get rid of these dimensional lines. I like to because it makes things really confusing when you're looking at it. And we'll zoom in a little bit. So now we're basically going to be welding across this section here and across this section here on both sides. And I'm gonna try and cut this out of some relatively thick material. I think I've got some 1/4" plate in there, which I was actually just trying to think about cutting it in 3/16, but we're gonna cut it out of thicker material. So we're gonna cut it out of the thickest stuff I've got, so that will add the rigidity to it that we're gonna need. So basically what you can do now is, this is something that I like to do. People do this in different ways, but I'll find the center line here, right? So this is my center line. And I want my hole to be 4 inches from this center line down. And I've determined that because when I was holding my tape measure up, you could see that the line that the bottom shock mount came to, it sort of split the difference between the bag plate and that down plate that's welded to the bag plate. So I hope this is making sense. I'm trying to explain it the best that I can. Maybe I'll do like a more in-depth Fusion 360 video in the future, but basically what I'm saying is it comes straight down from that bag bracket, just basically directly in the center, and I still have some travel up in that shock. So I can come down, I can come up with the shock a little bit, and I'll be able to kind of massage it into place if I need to, meaning I can like push the shock up and get it onto the bolt hole or whatever needs to be done. I should be able to do that, and they're kind of at this angle too, and I have a little bit more of that to play with as well. So I know that that's the measurement I want. So we're gonna go out to 4 inches, press enter, and this will bring me right here. And now I need a 1/2 inch because I'm gonna use a 1/2 inch bolt. So I'm gonna need a 1/2 inch hole. But like I said earlier, my machine will cut slightly undersized, so I have to up the size a little bit. And it kind of depends what I'll do. If it's something that I want to like bolt and nut on both sides, I won't make it too big. I'll make it like maybe at the most 20 thousandths bigger, because that normally hits it pretty dead on. 10 to 20 thousandths depending on what the hole is. Now, if it's something that I'm going to captive nut and I'm going to weld the nut onto the back side of the plate, I'll make it a bit bigger. And that's just so that way it's easier to find the thread as you thread in. You want to make that hole just a little bit bigger. And then that way too, when you're fixturing the bolt together to weld to the back of your plate, you have a little bit of like wiggle room that you can move the plate around or move the bolt around and get it kind of dead center on that hole. And then when you weld it on, it's perfect every time. So what I'll do here is I'll do 520. Oh. Make sure you put your points in there, 0.520. So that makes it 20 thou bigger than a regular 1/2 inch hole. You know, I'm sure you guys knew that already. So we'll leave that center line there because there might be something we can do here. Play around a little bit. Maybe we can put some, you know, big hole here, little hole, I don't know. Maybe we won't. I probably won't, honestly. I'll probably leave it just like this. But one thing we will do is we'll come up here to this button, which is the fillet button. And this will take your rough edges and that'll make them nice and round, so it's a little bit less disgusting to look at. This one isn't as important because we're gonna be welding across here and welding across here, and I want as much surface area as possible, so we're gonna leave that one. But down here is a little bit different. We actually could have made this a bit more rounded at the bottom here. But again, I was trying to keep this relatively simple. Let me just show you guys what that looks like just cause anyway. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of these main lines here. Okay, so now all we're left with here is this straight line that goes against the bottom bag bracket and our hole. Perfect. So now what we'll do is we'll do the offset command, and we'll offset this 0.250, which is 1/4 inch. So now there's 1/4 inch difference between both these circles here. And what I like to do with stuff like this is, if you take your line, in Fusion 360, sometimes you'll go around, you can't find the line unless you've already kind of lightly traced the line. I'm sure there's snaps that you can turn on and off to make it a little bit easier for you to do that. But what I always do is I'll start in the center and I'll go up. See how it leaves the dotted line there? I'll click here and I'll go all the way across, and this gives me a perfect line straight through the center of that circle. And now what I'll do is I will go to the line button and we'll go all the way over here, just like that. Escape, and do the same on this side, line all the way down, escape, and now we can start getting rid of some of these lines and using our trim function to trim some of these lines away. And boom, now you've got a round end instead of just kind of some chamfered corners. That's one way to go about it. You could also draw a line straight through like this, like we did before, right? With our 1/4 inch on this side, 1/4 inch on this side, and you can come to your arc and you do a 3-point arc and then kind of, you know, drag it out from there. So, you know, that's one way to do it. But anyway, that was just real quick how to design in Fusion 360. This is a super basic bracket, and I hope it helps. I mean, maybe we'll do a more in-depth video in the future, but let's get this cut out and get it mounted on the car. Well, that's a wrap on the rear suspension. I mean, besides the fact that I got to take the rear end out of it and, you know, go over all the welds and make sure everything's nice and welded and strong, maybe put some brackets on that, or some braces on that, on the panhard bar mount that's on the rear end. I might have to put a brace on that. I made one, but it just didn't quite fit after where it ended up being on the rear end. But yeah, so the rear end's all buttoned up. I'm thinking it looks pretty good. You could definitely see at that last little bit of travel when you air it all the way out, you could see the rear end kind of just slightly shift over from that panhard bar. If I could have just made it a little bit longer, that's probably what I would have done. I would have gotten less movement down at down at the low end of the suspension. I would have got less movement. If that arm is longer, you get less movement. If the arm is shorter, you get more movement. But if I could have just made it a little bit longer, it would have been good. I actually could still play with it a little bit and try and take some of the adjustment out, but you can't tell that it moved from the outside of the car. It's just when you're looking at the suspension airing down, you can see it as it gets to that last little bit, it kind of just shifts over just a little bit. And that's okay. I mean, again, I can't even drive it at this height. It's rubbing the tires and everything's just a mess at this height. If you guys haven't seen it aired out, I mean, the car is really low aired out. This is with the front and the rear aired out, and then remember, we're going to be chopping the top, so the car is definitely going to be sitting low. If I can try and show it to you guys. So this is without the roof chopped. This is the height that it's at, and it's probably like just right below my chest. And then once we get the top chopped, it's going to be even that much lower. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. The suspension's all finished up. Basically what needs to happen now is I need to try and get the motor in the car. So we're gonna have to cut a big hole in the firewall and then bolt the transmission up to the engine and kind of just hope for the best. You know what I'm saying? We're just gonna try and slide it in there, put some spacers underneath the oil pan and stuff for height, because I want to do it aired out so that way that the oil pan's not touching the ground or anything. So we're going to air it out, and we're going to put maybe like a 1/4 inch piece of plate underneath the oil pan. So the engine is probably going to sit a bit higher than it normally would in the engine bay, but I want that to be the case because I want to be able to air the car out without worrying about the engine sitting on the ground. So that's kind of the next step. I have to put that engine in the engine bay, cut the firewall out, and then we can kind of decide where to put the rack. Because right now, when you air this thing out, the mounts for it are like, you know, the spindle mounts are like this for the outer tie rods. So with that, we're gonna have to like radius into the firewall or into the frame rails up in the front to get the rack to sit right, and you know, be able to kind of go through the whole suspension, you know, travel. So anyway, my brain's kind of spent, if you guys can't tell. I've been kind of racking my brain on how to figure out the rest of this suspension, and I really wanted to get it at least to the point where it's done and all I have to do is like finish work now. So I'm a little bit kind of fried today. I've been going since really early this morning. I had to clean my whole garage first because I had to do maintenance on my truck, which is, if you guys are anything like me, I'd rather do this stuff all day, every single day, for every minute of the day, than ever touch any maintenance on anything, especially on a vehicle that nobody maintained before. So anyway, the garage was a mess. I had to clean it, and I cleaned the garage this morning, and that took me like 3 hours probably to completely straighten the garage back up before I could get to work on this. So, you know, we got some time invested in this thing today, and I've been shooting videos all day. I have 2 videos now. I mean, if that means anything to you guys. But yeah, so I got to edit these videos, and then we're gonna move on to the engine bay probably tomorrow, which I'm pretty excited about. So we'll revisit this with a fresh mind, some fresh pair of eyes. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching. All the new subscribers, you guys are awesome. I think the last time I checked, I was at like 217, which is pretty cool. I mean, it kind of still steadily grows as I'm not posting, which is surprising enough, but I'm gonna try and keep posting for you guys. Hopefully like once a week would be like at the very least. I would really like to do twice a week. It's just really hard with my schedule, with my son, with my wife. I got a full-time job on top of doing side work and customer work here. So it is kind of difficult to do that whole 2 video a week schedule, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. Anyway, all my information is in the links in the description. You know, website for Kennedy Performance Fab where you can get shirts, gloves, stickers. If you guys want to support the channel, that would be awesome. You can find all my social stuff, my personal social at Frankie K on Instagram or at Kennedy Performance Fab on Instagram. Follow the Kennedy Performance Fab one is more important to me than my own personal one, unless you guys just like seeing pictures of my kid and random stuff. So anyway, I'll catch you guys on the next one. I really appreciate it again. Peace out and see you later.